Hey everyone, this is Jordan from roadtofulltime.com and welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 5 of the podcast. I think it's episode 5. Yes, it's episode 5. I just checked. It's episode 5 of the podcast. And for those of you who might be watching the video portion of this, because again, these are all going to be video podcasts as well up on the YouTube channel. You can check that out at roadtofulltime.com/YouTube. You guys might notice something a little bit different. And for those of you who are listening to this, you're probably definitely not going to see this, but right behind me, I have my computer, and I have some really cool lights that are back there. These are like LED strip lights that kind of accent the desk. I'm trying to get like a cool little studio vibe out of my work area, so it's not just a plain computer. So slowly building up my little office area, and I wanted to kind of talk about those because I think those are great. I actually record this podcast usually 3 or 4 days early when they're released. And this one I'm actually recording it the night before it's supposed to be released because I was waiting for those lights to get in. And I wanted to put them on the desk and get those lit up just to give it a kind of a cool little look. So for those of you, again, who are listening, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But if you're watching this, you're definitely checking out these lights because they're really, really cool. So all that being said, that has nothing to do with today's topic. So today's topic is actually 3 questions that I'm going to answer for people who are starting their photography business, some beginner business tips. And the reason I chose these 3 questions is because ever since I've started the Road to Full Time, I've got actually a couple new listeners that have emailed me. You can email me at any time at jordan@roadtofulltime.com, and I'll get your question there. But they have actually emailed me, and I wanted to highlight their questions. So we're going to go and roll into these questions. I may have answered maybe 1 or 2 of these on a previous podcast when it was the older version of the podcast. But I still want to talk through these because these are really good questions that a lot of people, especially those who are brand new into trying to get their business off the ground and get their idea out there so maybe they can start getting hired for jobs and eventually quit their full-time job if this becomes a big thing, if that's what they want to do. Some people want to just do photography for being photography. But these are questions that are really important for beginners who really want to take their job, to take the full-time job away and just have their business start taking off and eventually be full-time. So question number 1 is, when I start my photography business, do I need to hire assistants and financial advisors? I'm assuming just for like tax purposes or something like that. Do I need anybody to help me with those types of tasks, or are these some things that I can do on my own? When you first kind of start out, you are your employee, basically. That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like to me because I'm my own employee. Not only am I quote unquote the boss of the company, but I'm also the employee that does everything else. So when it comes to invoicing, when it comes to getting expenses for the business taken care of, when it comes to taking mileage down for when you're driving from job to job, maybe you bought a new flash for your camera or something. You got to make sure you print out that invoice and write it down on a spreadsheet or something to track those expenses so you can turn them off at the end of the year and maybe get a little money back from it. If you have a website, maybe every month you got to print off that invoice. If it's taken out every month, you got to print off that invoice so you have it. Basically, you're a bookkeeper in a way. But also, when you get done with the job, you have to send out invoices to get paid. If a photographer if a client hasn't paid their bill in a month and a half, you have to go hunt them down and try to get your money. So you're not just a photographer. When you own your own business like that, you're not just a photographer. You're everything. You're the website designer. You're the bookkeeper. You're your own tax person. You can still obviously at the end of the year get tax advice and someone to file your taxes, but you're responsible for getting all of that taken care of. You do everything. You're the designer of the website. Obviously, you're the editor and the actual talent taking the photos, but you're basically doing everything. You're in your own little umbrella. And so, no, you don't have to hire these people to do it. Most likely, if you're starting a photography business anyway, you don't have tons and tons of people coming to you for jobs. So you have time to figure this out and learn the taxes, learn the designing of the website, learning all of this. You have time, and that's what's really cool about starting the business from the ground up. Is not only do you get the satisfaction of starting something really cool, but you also get to learn different aspects of business, and that's what's really fun, to me at least, is learning the aspects of running a business. Sure, when you start having 50 jobs a month or something like that, you can hire like a financial advisor to take care of the paperwork for you, do all that stuff if you want to, but you don't have to. Yes, it might take a lot more time on the back end for you, because not only when you get done with the job, do you have to go edit the photos, you got to send off the photos, you got to wait for the payment, process the payment, make sure you balance your business checkbook, all that kind of stuff. Not only do you have to do all that, but you have to do everything else as far as taking the actual photos. So these days you're not just a photographer, you're actually an entrepreneur. You're someone who is running the business. You are the sole business. So eventually, yes, you can get to that point, but right now you're just plan on doing everything and just accept it, because that's how it's going to be. You don't want to hire anybody. You don't want to take from your bottom line just because you don't want to do any of that stuff. Just suck it up, do it, and you'll be really happy in the end when you do. Okay, so let's go into question 2. And I did forget to write down the names of these people. I should have done that before I started recording, but honestly, these lights got me tripping over here. Love these lights. But I didn't write them down, so I really apologize. On the show notes for the episode on the website, I will put credit for those who did put these questions in. I just wanted to say that. So if you want to get a little fuzzy, warm feeling that I answered your question, you want your name out there, go ahead and check on the show notes. So question 2 is, let's see, I'm going to read this one's kind of a longer one. I see other professional photographers. Oh, I know this one. I got really mad when I read it. I see other professional photographers in my area that have really expensive gear. When do I know I need to buy more gear, like camera bodies and lenses, or when to stick with what I have? Okay, so the reason I get mad is because when it comes to gear, I get kind of antsy when it comes to gear, because I feel like people concentrate on that enough, way too much actually. They just concentrate on it just way too much. So the overall question is, when do you need to upgrade your gear? The answer that I would give, the quick simple answer I would give, is when your gear is limiting what you can do. So an example like that would be, if you have a very basic entry-level DSLR, crop frame sensor camera, and you find that you're taking, this is a really simple example, but you find that you're taking a lot of indoor photos, maybe you're trying to be a wedding photographer or something like that, and you're taking these reception hall photos, it's kind of dimly lit in there, and you're just starting out, maybe you don't even have a flash, that's a whole different example, but maybe you don't even have a flash, and you're trying to take these photos, and you notice that the noise in the photos is just off the charts ridiculous. It's so bad. And I've been in the situation, when you take the photo, you're like, I don't even want to give this to the client. I don't want them to see this photo because it's so bad. That's when you know your camera gear is limiting you from doing your job. Just because you see a quote unquote professional photographer in your area have have a freaking Hasselblad that has 40,000 megapixels, whatever it is, doesn't mean that you need that. One thing that I always try to talk about gear is let's say you're looking for a telephoto lens, and you shoot, in my case, you shoot real estate. You might see that this new telephoto lens came out and you're really excited about it. It's kind of cool. You can get zoomed in and stuff. What does that do for your photography though? Just because it's a really cool lens, gets really sharp images, doesn't mean you need it. And this is kind of a weird example, but you kind of get where I'm coming from. If you're a real estate photographer, you don't need a telephoto lens. Why would you even need that? So just because maybe you see all these other photographers out in the field and they have like a 70 to 200 or something, and you don't even have a telephoto lens that's capable of going past 100 millimeters, Doesn't mean that you need to immediately go get a telephoto lens because people have them. Sure, it would be nice, but you're not at that point yet, especially when you're a beginner. So gear is just, gear is, if I were to kind of give a different analogy for it, gear is like a paintbrush. The picture you're taking is a canvas, and your gear is the paintbrush. Sure, you can buy some really expensive paintbrushes that have like exotic horsehair on them or something like that, but if you just go get the starter pack, the starter pack of brushes that have like 5 different little brushes in them, most likely you can still probably get the job done. You just got to work a little harder, work around it, and eventually you can go buy those more expensive brushes. I'm not a painter. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but that's an example of what your mindset should be. I've said it before, and I'll say it many, many times going throughout this podcast. I have a Canon 6D. At the time that I was looking to upgrade my camera, because my camera was limiting me, at the time I was looking at it, I was looking between, this was like 2 years ago, I was looking at a Canon 5D Mark III, because the Mark IV wasn't out yet, and I was looking at a Canon 6D. I chose the Canon 6D because of price, and also did a little bit of research, and I found out the Canon 6D, because I wanted a full frame camera, the Canon 6D had the same exact sensor as the 5D Mark III. So sensor quality, image quality is basically going to be the same. It might be just a little bit different, but basically going to be the same. It was a full frame sensor. It was an entry level full frame body, but it did what I needed it to do. So I saved like $1,000 or $1,200 by not getting that expensive camera and getting the 6D. All I had to do was do a little bit of research, and I found that out. So yeah, would it be nice to have a 5D Mark III at that time? Yeah, oh yeah, I love saying, hey, yeah, I have a 5D Mark III. It's great. But a Canon 6D does what I need it to do. You don't need the biggest, baddest equipment ever, because most likely you can still do what you need to do. Same thing with I know I'm harping on this a lot, but same thing with my drone. My drone is like 5 years old or 6 years old or something like that. I don't remember. And the camera is not the most stellar camera. It's not the best camera out there for drones. But for $800, that drone does exactly what I need it to do. It takes decent images, and the video, it's 4K. It's not the best 4K in the world, but it still takes 4K. Most of the time, I don't even shoot in 4K. But it does everything I need it to do, and I can still fix a couple things in editing to make it look great. That's it. I don't want to spend... Sure, I can spend money on a Inspire, but why would I do that if it's going to do more? If it's doing way more than I would ever need it. Some people would say that's called future proofing. I'll tell you what though, I would rather buy the cheap stuff right now and keep continuing to buy the cheap stuff, because eventually I'm going to future proof out way in the future, and it's still not going to be good enough. There's still going to be more stuff coming out. Just because you buy something that's top of the line right now, 2 years from now, just like the old saying with computers when they came out, it's already old like a year later. That's exactly how it's going to be. So I would keep with what you have right now. I have no idea what you have. But if it's not limiting you and you're still able to do what you're doing, and it's not, it's not taking away from your job, you might have to work a little bit harder. I would still keep with what you have. And just work towards getting better gear. I'm not saying you have to keep it for 10 years, but work towards getting better gear. And I'm sure what you have right now is going to be fine for what you're doing. Okay, so that was about a ramble and a half, but I'm gonna bring it home with this last question. And again, I know I've answered this question on the podcast before when it was the Picture Monk stuff, but I still want to harp on it again because there are different ways of doing this. And it says, this next question is, how do I build my portfolio when I'm first starting out? So obviously when you're first starting out, you're not getting tons and tons of jobs. People calling you every day asking for your work. You're not really getting that. You might have had a couple clients in the past that had said, hey, can you take pictures of me and my family or something like that? And that's a simple way of building your portfolio. But you're not getting a whole lot of calls, so your portfolio might look a little old to you, might look a little stagnant, but do with what you have starting out. If you have starting out, if you took photos of your neighbor's kids, maybe they have like 3 kids or something like that, take photos of the kids, fill your portfolio up with those projects. Maybe not put in duplicates or anything else, but fill up as much as you can. But then it's up to you to work really, really, really hard every weekend you can, every holiday you can, to build up your portfolio. I'm doing this as a portrait photographer example, to build up your portfolio to try to get newer images. Don't think that you took 6 months ago, you took a picture of a family and you can keep it up there as your like main banner photo, because most likely since 6 months ago you kind of were just starting out. Now hopefully you know a little bit more what you're doing, and you have better images. So build that portfolio up over when you first start out. Build it up extremely, extremely fast. Again, every weekend, go see if somebody will pose for you. Again, portrait photographer example. Grab your mom and dad, see if they'll pose for you. Grab some friends from your college, or grab some coworkers of yours, or something like that. Offer, hey, I will take these photos for you for free if you just let me use them on a website. You can have the prints, you can do everything you want with them. Just please let me use these on my website as a promo thing. That'll be great starting out. And then you'll start getting these jobs. Then you'll start really getting that money coming in, that the talent coming in. And that's when you can put more photos, more actual real photos from real paying jobs on your website. When people look at your website, they're not going to know. They have no idea that maybe you took a photo for free. It's going to look exactly like every other photo. It's going to look like, man, this guy has a lot of jobs. It's exactly what it's going to look like. They're not going to be like, well, there's 2 photos on there, man, they look almost exactly the same. It's the same model. Maybe this is not like a real deal photographer. No, they're going to look at these and be like, look at the quality of those photos. They're really great. That's for a global thing when it comes to the websites. It's almost like if I were to put a phrase on it, fake it till you make it. Fake it like you had all these jobs that people hired you for, and put the photos up on the website. Eventually, yes, you will have to probably take those down because they'll be bad compared to what you're doing now. But when you just need that little bit of fake, that little bit of fakeness in your work, so then you can remove that real quick and put up the new stuff and put up the paying jobs. For example, and this is the reason I like this question a lot, on my photography portfolio site, if you haven't checked that out, if you want to just look at it real quick, it's photographynorthcarolina.com. If you look at that site right now, at the time of this podcast, the main banner photo on the very front page is a picture of it's like a lake house, and it has real big windows, and you can see a boat out in the back, and it's an interior living room photo. That photo was not a paid gig photo. That's actually my wife's father's home. That he lives on the lake and everything. And I walked into that home and I was like, I would love to take a picture of this living room. So one evening I took a picture of the living room. I cleaned it up kind of nice and did some stuff to it. And now that's the header right now currently. It's going to probably change, but that's the current photo of my banner image on my website. The main photo, the first photo that somebody sees, is not a paid gig photo. Now, I always have other paid gigs that I can put different photos on there, but I really like that photo right now. I think it's a really good photo, so I'm going to keep that there. So again, when people see that, they're not going to be like, did he really get paid for that? I don't know. No, they're going to see it and be like, oh, it's a cool photo. Okay, let's check out what the other guy, what else this guy has. So again, just build up your portfolio the way you can. There's many different ways of doing that, especially when it comes to portraits. Those are very easy. You just got to just coerce people into posing for you. Real estate, I've talked about this, for example. Photograph everybody's home that will let you offer to clean their home for them, just to let you take photos of their home. Again, this was like I was talking about the main banner photo. That was just a photo. I walked into the home and I was like, hey, do you mind if I straighten the room up a little bit, and then I can take a photo, and then you guys can tear it up again. That's fine. So it's stuff like that. Wedding photographers, That's going to be a little bit difficult because you actually have to be at a wedding, but maybe you can hop in on a second shooter for a real professional wedding photographer, and just follow them around and just say, hey, I won't even charge you for a second shooter as my services. Just let me use the photos for my portfolio, that sort of thing. So there's many different ways of doing it. You just got to think outside the box. So those are the 3 questions for this podcast. I probably rambled on a little bit too much. But the main reason, for those of you who, again, are not watching this on YouTube, the main reason I kept talking over and over and over again, and this is probably a little bit longer than usual, is because these lights. Go check out the YouTube video. I love these lights. So that's it, guys. Thank you for joining me in this week's podcast. I appreciate you hopping in every week to check out the podcast. I appreciate all of the comments, the questions. Very awesome. Please make sure to send your questions, if you have any, to Jordan at no, that's not it. To Jordan at roadtofulltime.com, and I'll be sure to answer your question there. And I guess that's it, guys. I guess I will see you in next week's podcast. Have a good week.